Hi. So last time we talked about variables. Today we look at the other main aspect of programming, which is control flow. So far we have been writing, simple expressions and just looking at their values. But programming becomes interesting when you can get the computer to perform repetitive tasks. And that is what we are going to do today. Okay. So let's see. So remember that we said that the cells can contain code, but the cells can also contain markdown, which is textual data. So you can go to cell type and choose markdown, but doing it each time is too tedious. So there are keyboard shortcuts for many of the operations. So you can go to help and say keyboard shortcuts, and that will tell you what keyboard shortcuts are available. So you can see that you can type capital M to change a cell to markdown. You can type 1 to change a cell to heading 1 and so on. So then that's easy. So we'll just say, remember to press escape to make sure you're not editing, and say capital M. So this becomes a markdown, and let's write our first problem. So this is problem number 1, which is that print all numbers from 1 to 10. Okay, all integers. So we are doing serious mathematics, so we should not be so careless with words like numbers. Integers from 1 to 10. So how do you print something? So far we have been relying on a built-in feature of the Jupyter notebook that you evaluate some expressions, then the value of the last expression is what is printed out. So suppose you can put more than one expression in a cell, by the way. So if I say 2 plus 2 plus 3 into 5 and I press shift enter, then you get the value of the last expression 50. But now I want from a single cell to print out multiple numbers. So how am I going to do that? Well, what I use what is known as a function. So print line is a function, and if you say print line 15, then it prints 15. So a function, so functions are like mathematical function, and in fact, a lot of the mathematical functions are available in Julia. So for example, you can say sine, cosine, absolute value, everything is available. So you can say absolute value of minus 10, you get 10. So in a way, it looks like a mathematical function, that you have function name, bracket, and then the argument or multiple arguments to the function, and then you get the value of the function. But in Julia and many other programming languages, some functions you don't call to create a value, you call the function to create an effect, right? So for example, suppose I want to print two numbers out of this. So I can say print line, or I print something. My lucky number is. So then when this is evaluated, this expression, my lucky number is print line, then the result of that is to print that line. So unlike mathematical function which takes a value and gives you a value, some functions in a language like Julia perform some action. So they are more like commands. So when you say print line, my lucky number is, the action is that it prints that string wherever you are running Julia. Similarly, when you say print line 15, it prints that string. So print line is a function that we call for performing an action rather than calculating a value. Right? Fine. So now if your job is to print numbers from 1 to 10, you could start off like this. Print line 1, print line 2, print line 3. But this is going to be tedious. That's not what you bought a computer for. So you need something to make it automatic. And what does that is known as a loop. A loop is something where a same set of commands is going to get executed again and again. So let me write the whole thing and then I will explain. Okay, so we have already, let's remove this also. So we have the answer, but how did this all work? So let's look at the structure of a loop. So this is, there multiple kinds of loop in Julia. This is what is known as a for loop. So it says for I is equal to 1:10. So I will explain that before, but the important thing is that there's a starting point of the loop which starts with this keyword for. So you cannot use for as a name for your variable and so on, because it has a special meaning for Julia. So you say for something something something, will come what that is. Then you have a body of the loop which may be multiple statements, and then you have an end, right? It is a convention that when you are writing loops and similar statements, then the body is indented. That is, I pressed a tab before this line, and Jupyter makes sure that it's written slightly to the inside. Because later, when you will be writing a lot of loops, you want to be able to see at a glance what constitutes the body of the loop. So we always indent the body of the loop. If you don't do it, the code still works because Julia does not care about indentation. But for humans, and for the main human is yourself, when you are reading the code, it is essential that you indent it like this. Okay. Now let's get into it in the more detail. So for, you give a variable name. I have called it I. It can be any name. So I is equal to, and this 1:10 is a range. So you can think it of as a sequence that goes from 1 to 10. So you are saying that I will go from 1 to 10. And then for each time I takes on a value, the body of the loop is executed with that value of I. Right? That is why I is called something like a variable, because its value is changing. So what Julia will do is, it will first give the value I is equal to 1, execute the body with that I. So when you have println I, right now I is 1, so 1 gets printed. Then it will give I is equal to 2, and you say println I, so 2 gets printed. Then you give I is equal to 3, println I, 3 gets printed, and so on up till 10. So we continue like that, and all the 10 numbers are printed. Okay. So this is where we see that we have kind of make use of a loop. Now suppose that I give you another problem. So again I go here, I escape say M to make it markdown, and my problem is that add all integers. Okay. So what I now need, what happened? I forgot to make this into markdown. It did not become markdown, so it assumed that this is code. Oh my god. Okay, let me do it from here. So what we do is that we create a variable which we initially give the value 0. Okay. Then I go again from for I is equal to 1 to 10. So again I will take on successively values from 1 to 10. And I say result is equal to result plus I. Okay. And then I say end. And finally I put a result so that it is printed, because I could have put a println, but anyway the cell is going to print the last expression. So I keep result as the last expression. So when I execute this, I get the answer 55. So what's happening here, now you can see that, how when you assign something to a variable or you bind something to a variable, the right hand side can contain the current value of the variable. So you start off with result is equal to 0. Then I is going to go from 1 to 10. So I is initially 1. So result becomes 0 plus 1. So it's 1. Then you go back, and now I becomes 2. So result becomes result plus 2, but result is already 1. So it becomes 1 plus 2. Then it becomes 3. Then 3 plus 4, and so on. Goes on till 10. So you end up adding all the numbers between 1 and 10. And you get the answer 55, which if you check with your n plus 1 by 2 is the correct answer. Okay. So these are for loops. For loops are useful for going over some sequence. So here we are going to go over a sequence of integer values, but we will see it can be applied to other situations also, where you have some predefined sequence and you want to go over that. Okay. Now here our body of the loop was very simple, because each time we are applying the same operation, right? Except that the value of I kept on changing, so the effect of the operation was different, but the operation was the same each time. But now I'm going to show you a problem which is a very famous kind of interview question, and where you cannot have the body doing the same thing each time. So the question is like this. So for numbers from 1 to say 20, if the number is divisible by 3, print phase. If it is divisible by 5, print bus. If it is divisible by both, print fizzbuzz. otherwise print the number. So now you can see that there is a condition involved. So we need something in the code also to take care of conditions. So what takes care of condition in code is the if statement. Okay. So what does it look like? So again I say for I is equal to 1 to 20. So let me do it in steps. First let me print 3 if it is phase. So how do I check whether it's divisible by 3? Use the remainder operator. So basically say if you say 7% 3, it will give you the remainder of dividing 7 by 3, right? So to check if something is divisible by 3, we call it the modulo operator. So you say 7 modulo 3, and if the modulo is 0, that means the number is divisible by 3, right? So that's what we will use to check divisibility. So first let's aim to just print phase if it is divisible by 3. So let's try that. So we say for I is equal to 1 to 20. What we use if I modulo 3 equals to 0. Sorry, print ln, and one end for the if and one end for the for. So it's working, right? 1, 2 phase, 4, 5 phase, and so on. So let's see what's happening here. So now inside the for I have a if else statement. So it says if, then a condition. I modulo 3 is the remainder that you get from dividing I by 3. Why do I have a double equal to? Because a single equal to is used for variable assignment. So for checking equality, you have to use a double equal to. So this is actually checking that in mathematical sense is equal to 3. Whereas the single equality is just used to assign a value to a variable. So you say double equal to 0. So basically divisible by 3, print phase, otherwise print I. Okay, and end. So now you see this println is inside the control of both the for and the if. So indenting is mattering, that it's telling us exactly which statements belong to the body of which. So the body of a if can have multiple statements, else can have multiple statements, and so on. Now for the actual phase bus, I have more conditions. Okay, else if okay, so now in multiples of 5 you are getting bus. Okay, but for 15, which is multiple of 5 and 3, you are getting phase, because see the first condition is executed. I modulo 3 is 0, it will print phase, and then it will immediately go to the end of the if, right? So it will not look at the other else ifs. So only when I modulo 3 is false will it look at the other else if. Are you getting the point? That as soon as one condition is met, it's executed and you go to the end. You say if this is false, then check this. If nothing works, then do this, and so on. So for the 15 case, we will have to check it to begin with. Right? So you check at the beginning if it is divisible by 15, because see something is divisible by both 3 and 5 only if it is divisible by 15. So what we will do is we will put a check for 15 first. So now 15 is handled correctly, right? So first 15 is checked. If it is false, then we check for 3 and for 5. Doesn't matter in which order we check, because 3 and 5 doesn't matter. And then finally we print I if nothing happens, right? So then this is the kind of pattern we'll see in a lot of codes, that you iterate over some sequence and then you look at conditions and you take actions based on what you see. Right? So this is known as control flow. Basically now not everything is being executed. One is things are being repeatedly executed with changes in the values of some variable. Then some things are being conditionally executed depending on what's happening, and so on. So it is by combining these things can we build up bigger and bigger programs. So more on this in our next video. Thank you.